Welcome to episode 7 of That Grief Relief podcast. I'm Katie Overy, and I've had a little bit of a break over Christmas and New Year. I thought it's very well deserved. No, it was, I went back on the radio for a couple of weeks and my brain was a bit fried, and a couple of guests that I was supposed to have before the new year then said, can we do it after the new year? So anyway, here we are and we're back, and I hope you missed me. So this week, I am joined by Kathryn Wingrove. I've got a great title for you. I just stole it from your Instagram. Director of Hospitality and Lifestyle at Z7 Comms. Now, what's weird is that you reached out to me following episode 6 with Louise Jacobson, speaking about her mum. You reached out to me, and although you did just say why you did that, I have no idea. And I want to know, first of all, hello. I haven't even given you a chance to say hello back to me. Hi. Don't look at the microphone so scared. Why are you so scared?
I don't know. It's weird.
I'm going to put it a bit close to you now. Because you've gone away. Come back. Come back to the microphone. Why did you approach me?
I listened to Louise's podcast. I saw your first ones and I kind of dipped in and out. And then that was the one that I really wanted to listen to. So do
you know Louise?
No, well, we're PRs. I know of her.
Okay, right, yeah.
So I don't think we've ever met. But I listened, and there was a lot of things that resonated with me, and I just thought perhaps I should do this. And then when you messaged me back, you were like, she said it was really cathartic. Yeah. And then I remember I was like, you had me at cathartic. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
And it's a strange one, because I didn't realise how cathartic this podcast was going to be. Bearing in mind, I haven't even told my story yet, which is going to come up in the next few weeks, actually. It's my brother Russell that's going to kind of interview me, which is a bit of a weird one. But I didn't realise how cathartic it was going to be for everyone else. And then that's kind of developed onto some of the feedback that I've had from the podcast of people that I don't know that have said, oh, it's amazing, or you've encouraged me to go to therapy, or this is free therapy. And I'm like, should I be charging for this? So hopefully it is cathartic for you, because I literally do not know your story, like not one piece. I know it's about your dad. So tell me your story and tell me all about your dad.
Dad was diagnosed with cancer in 2018.
Oh gosh, it was really soon.
Yeah.
Pretty recent. Okay.
Yeah, very recent. And it was a very weird year for us as a family. My daughter Sophie had been in and out of hospital from the age of 9 months. So we had been basically in and out every 6 weeks with her. She developed breathing difficulties.
Oh, goodness.
At the age of, like, I took her to nursery. It was Christmas, the last day before Christmas. Yeah. She was wearing like a Santa outfit. And then they called me and they said that she wasn't very well. Obviously, at 9 months, she's very particular about her wardrobe. So that was the first time they called me in, and we took her straight to hospital. And then from that point, we were in literally every 6 weeks with a stay of 3 to 4 nights every time. So it was quite stressful.
Yeah.
And then that went on and on and on. And during that summer, we had lots of things going on. She, again, was sick. She was in ICU this time, and it was really bad. And then my dad had been at the same time suffering from, he had a cough and he just wasn't feeling very well, and so they were making lots of appointments to go in and get it looked at. And it felt like forever that it took to get a diagnosis. Nothing was really clear. He was going to see lots of specialists, he was having lots of tests done. I think that we all knew that the diagnosis was going to be lung cancer, but we were all, it's that waiting. I can't really describe it. It was just a very strange time. Like we all had a feeling that was what it was going to be, but we were trying to be positive about it, and we were just kind of waiting. So we went back to the UK end of June for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Still waiting, still having lots of tests, and then it went on for a really, really long time. We went to Canada, came home, still waiting. By this point, we're talking about end of July, I think. And then I was due to start a new job at Z7 at the beginning of October.
Okay.
I'd taken a bit of time off in between jobs. And we were in Canada. Actually, we weren't. We were in Seattle. Semantics.
So what's in Seattle, Canada? You were just
Sorry,
on
we
holiday?
went to. So my sister lives in Canada.
Right.
I'm one of 6 kids, and
Are you a Catholic family?
No.
Wow.
I always get asked that. No, and we're spread out everywhere.
Same mum, same dad.
Yeah. We, 5 of us at the minute are in different places. So
No way.
I have my oldest brother Simon lives in Jakarta.
Okay.
My oldest sister Claire lives in Kelowna in British Columbia, which
Okay.
is where we were.
Right.
My brother Robin usually is in London, but he's currently in Thailand and he's been there since 2019, end of the year.
Okay.
David is in the UK, lives near my mum.
Right. Good.
And Ali, my younger sister, lives in Sydney. So we're literally everywhere.
Way.
Yeah.
And you're in Dubai.
Yeah.
Your parents' time zones, they must be like, right, okay, who can we call?
I know.
Who's
Well,
available?
my mum has clocks
Brilliant.
in her kitchen,
Yeah.
like dotted around, like Dubai time,
Yeah.
Canada time. And her brother also lives in the States as well. He lives in Colorado. So we're
No
literally
way.
everywhere.
My friend Tess, so she was in Dubai. Her brother was in the UK where her parents are, and then her other brother was in Sydney. So they got the 3 clocks made for the mum and dad in the kitchen, I think, because that's perfect.
That's the way that she knows. So she's kind of,
Yeah.
this
Right.
time difference is easy for her because we're only 4 hours. 3
Yeah.
hours is better in the
Yeah.
summer, but this is fine.
Okay, so you were...
So yeah, sorry. We'd been to see my sister in Canada,
Right.
and we'd spent a couple of weeks there. We
Okay.
were en route home, but we had a day in Seattle
Mm-hmm.
for some reason. And mum called me. He'd had some tests, and I called her, and she said that he'd had this breathing thing, and she was like, it went really well, really, really positive.
Good.
And then we went home a few weeks later. She said basically that it was really weird. We knew that he was having this appointment, and then they had basically said there's nothing they can do. All they can do is make him comfortable.
Straight out the
And I just think that I couldn't really get my head around that because I was texting her saying, I don't understand what you mean. This had gone well. It was a breathing test that he'd done to basically check to see if they could operate on him. But they were like, no, it's at that point, I think it was metastatic. Is that how you...
Good question, don't know.
Yeah. So, and she was just like, basically it's palliative care from now on. And we were like, what?
How is that
we'd
escalated?
like from 0 to 1,000 in, it was a long time, but why did it take so long to get the results? And these were the questions that we were kind of asking. So immediately Dad was put on to steroids and, all of those kind of drugs. And then I took the decision to push back my start date with Z7, flew back home for a couple of weeks. My sister Ali had flown in from Sydney. She was going to spend 3 months with them.
All in, yeah.
Awesome time with them just to try and help my mum and, just be there for them.
And what was sorry to interrupt you, had they given a time scale at this point?
We never asked.
You never
So
asked?
Dad didn't want to know.
Fine,
I think
okay.
we were all so shocked. And I think that he just couldn't get his head around it. He was just like, well, this is crazy. And I remember saying to him, when I flew back, I was kind of with him in his office because he was still working.
How old was he?
78.
Okay. Still working?
Yep.
Fair play.
Yeah. He was a consultant, a chartered surveyor, and he was very much working.
You never let them go either as well, like, because I've worked on the other side, and so speaking to chartered surveyors, you're like, yeah, but they're like 104, yeah, they're the best in the town. So.
Literally, he'd done it for years and years, and actually his work ethic I've inherited, which I really hate, and it's something that I'm trying to move away from, but yeah.
Shout out to anyone in Kathryn's team who works beneath Kathryn.
Oh, they know. So when I went back, he was kind of going through his notes with me, and he said at this point he was on the steroids, and it's an absolute head fuck. Because he was fine.
Yeah.
They give you these drugs, they make you feel like you're okay. And he said to me, do I look like a man who they've described in these letters? And I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So it was a really hard time. He really didn't understand what was going on. And I don't know, I wasn't at any of his appointments, but I just don't think that it was really explained or... But no, we talked about it. He didn't want to know. We didn't want to know something that he didn't know. And so we just kind of went with it.
Fine.
So yeah, we had 2 lovely weeks. Sophie and I flew back and spent some time with him, and you know, he was obviously still working and getting on with it because he thought he was absolutely fine. And
was he fine at that point? Was he starting to get tired at all? I'm just trying to think about my dad.
He was sleeping a lot.
Okay, yeah.
He was sleeping a lot. But he'd always, you know, he'd worked from home for quite a while. Him and my mum had this routine where they kind of danced around each other, you know, during the day where he was working, she would go off and do her thing, and she'd make him lunch, and then he'd have a little snooze in the afternoon, which was not out of the ordinary, but he was becoming more tired, I would say. So yeah,
that's a shame. Okay, so the 2 weeks you spent at this point, what time, what month are we in 2018?
This was the end of September.
Right, okay.
End of September, we went for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because I was in the middle of having my visa cancelled as well. So I would have gone earlier, but I was kind of waiting for that to come back. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took a bit of time to get back home. But yeah.
Okay. And then I don't even know when he passed. Did he make it through Christmas?
November the 28th.
Oh my gosh, that really was quick.
It was very quick. Not expected. He had been fine. I started my new job beginning of October. You know, I was kind of very much in contact with mum just to keep updated with what was going on. I was feeling it was a really difficult time for me. Like, for me personally, I just started a new job. I had a sick child, and you know, this was all going on, and it was really difficult because of the work ethic. I was like, well, I can't just, you know, what to do.
Yeah.
It was really difficult to make decisions, and I just found that I couldn't.
Yeah.
I think you know, emotionally, when things get a bit difficult, I just tend to shut down and focus on work. And that's basically what I did. And so I just kind of got going, but was talking to mum all the time just to get updates on what was going on.
Right. So you were back in Dubai after the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
And then, you know, October kind of passed without event. He was in and out of hospital. He was diagnosed. God, I forget quite a lot of things. He was sick, and I think he got admitted a couple of times. And I'm gonna, like, the order of things,
it's like, a total blur, isn't it?
No idea. I know that there was a couple of admissions. I know that he had a fall at home, and I think from that point it became a bit worrying. So he had this fall. They called the ambulance. They because my sister and my mum couldn't get him up. And so that I think that point, it became a bit real about what was happening. And I don't think they took him to hospital that night. I think that they kept him at home.
Okay.
And then a couple of days later, he got sick. He had low levels of calcium, I want to say.
Okay.
I'm probably getting this all wrong. My mum will be listening going, you're completely wrong.
We can do a fact check later on. That's fine.
But he got admitted to hospital with that. And then I'm probably out of line saying this, but I just feel like that was the beginning of the end. And you hear stories, don't you, about as soon as someone's in hospital, then that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And from then, mum was messaging, and she was saying that he is confused a lot of the time, and I couldn't really understand that. It was so hard being so far away. All I wanted to do was go home. And she would say he's confused, and I was like, but what do you mean? You know, nothing was really making any sense to me. And then that kind of carried on. And a couple of weeks later, I had a launch here, and I was in Dubai Mall going up the escalators, and mum messaged and said, he's had a gastro bleed. And again, I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I remember she said to me, I was sitting on the escalators, and she said to me, I can't believe we ever questioned what the end would look like. And then I was like, she was like, the end, you know, when he was going to die. She was like, I can't believe we ever wondered whether we would know, kind of thing. She's like, it feels like we're there. And this was the end of November. I was due to travel back for the National Day weekend anyway. I'd booked that flight. I'd said to my husband, which is beginning of December. I'd booked the flight. I'd said to my husband, I want to go. I'm just going to go and see him. I want to spend some time with him, because we'd made the decision not to go. But I don't know why. We decided not to go home for Christmas.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'd booked the flight. I was ready to go. Mum and I had had this conversation when I was in Dubai Mall, running from one meeting to another. Yeah. Running, all I ever do. And I remember going from there in a taxi to somewhere else, just sobbing in the taxi, and then getting out, sorting myself out, going back in and carrying on. And got home that night just with that horrible sinking feeling, knowing that something was going to happen. And my mum and I had been speaking kind of on and off all day. My sister and I had been speaking on and off all day.
And your sister was still there?
She was still
UK?
there, yeah,
okay.
with her 2 kids, and kind of hanging out with mum, looking after everybody. And then that night I went to bed, and I'd left my phone downstairs in the kitchen, which was something that I'd started to do as a way of curbing anxiety.
Yeah.
Leave the phone downstairs.
Irony. Yeah.
But I woke up with a start at 4:00, and I got up and stacked it over a suitcase, which I'd left on the middle of the floor.
Oh, no. Had you already started packing?
Yeah, I mean, my flight was the next morning. I was flying the next day.
Sorry,
so
right.
Yeah, sorry,
okay.
I'm kind of going all
That's
over the place.
okay. So you had changed your flight. You were
No,
going early.
I was due to fly on the Thursday.
Anyway,
so this was the 28th of November.
Fine, okay.
I was due to fly on the 29th in the morning.
Right.
So my suitcase was at the end of the bed, just got up, stacked it over it, which
Fine.
was a bit of a funny moment. Then I went downstairs, picked up my phone, and I sat, and I was basically like this on the sofa. And the phone rang, and it was my brother. And I just picked it up. I was like, I know what you're going to say. And so it turns out this was 5 in the morning, I think, by the time David had called me.
Yeah.
I woke up at 10 to 4. My dad had died at just before midnight, I believe. So it was almost exactly the same time that I woke up, which is one of those sort of weird moments. So I was sat waiting for the call. And then we had kind of had these conversations, and I know Louise had said that her family decided not to tell her about her mum when she was flying back. And David had said to me, my brother, that they kind of had a discussion about whether to tell me or not. And then I was like, thank God you did, because I just don't think I could have coped with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
because I think the difference is, and this is when the same kind of conversation when my brother was flying over when my dad was still ill and my dad had taken a turn. But at this point, my brother was at the airport and on the plane. So there's literally nothing he could have done. Whereas obviously you were due to fly maybe 12 hours later or something. Yeah. So I think for your family to not have told you for that length of time wouldn't have sat right with them. No. Perhaps that's what you're saying. Okay, so talk me through then, if you don't mind, what the hell happened then for you? Like, what happened physically, emotionally? What were then the next steps before you getting your flight?
I think the best way to describe it is an out-of-body experience. I kind of just packed up and did what I needed to do. That wait between, so I was obviously up from early, and I just kind of, I went upstairs and told Tommy what had happened, and then I couldn't really, obviously, go back to sleep. But I had an 18-month-old who I was taking back home with me, and I guess I just focused on her. Yeah. And because it was just the two of us who were going back for the weekend, so I just kind of concentrated on her, got through the flight. Another random coincidence, I had flown a lot that summer.
Okay.
And I always flew with Virgin when they used to fly in from London. Yeah. And the same crew member was on every single flight that I took that year. So that's every weird. Time I was backwards and forwards. Yeah.
Do you think they looked at the manifest and was like, there's Kathryn, I'm in?
It was just the weirdest thing. So we'd for some reason, we'd got talking in the summer when I was on one of my flights, and then I just kept seeing her on every other one. Yeah, weird. She was on about 6 of them. Okay. Really strange. Okay. Her sister lives here, and her sister lives just near to where we are. Right. So we'd kind of got chatting about that, and so she was, and then there she was on that morning on that flight. So it was almost like a weird sort of comfort thing, because she basically just looked after Sophie and I, and it made it that little bit easier. So I'll always be really grateful for that. It was just one of those weird experiences. Are
you still in touch with her at all?
Every now and then.
Are you friends on like Facebook or something?
Instagram and Facebook. She messaged me over Christmas, actually.
Okay, so how nice must that have been then to see this lovely crew member?
It was nice, and she took her off, took Sophie off.
And you'd explained to her what had happened?
She knew, so she knew that I'd been going backwards and forwards to see Dad, and so the first thing she said to me was, "How was he?" And obviously I had to say, yeah. But she was just so good. She was just kind of backwards and forwards, making sure we were okay. She took Sophie off to do the afternoon tea service, so she was delivering boxes and things, which was nice. And
And what was going through your mind as you sat on this 7-hour flight?
Just what was I going back to? Just wanting to, just desperate to get home to my mum and my sister and my brother who were all there, and just wanting to like be with them. Absolutely gutted that I wasn't there at the end. I think that is something that I will never ever forgive myself for. I know that that's something that Louise had said as well,
and Nicole before as well.
And I've thought about it a lot. I know it's not my fault. I know that there's nothing that I could have done. I just wish that I'd gone earlier. But I mean, none of us could ever have known what would happen. And even I spoke to his doctor from our local surgery the day after, and I said to him, "God, did you know, I know we never asked about times, but did you know? Is this what you expected?" And he said, "No, this wasn't what was expected." So basically what had happened was,
excuse me,
he was sick, but it was he ended up having 2 gastric bleeds, and that was what did it in the end, and that obviously wasn't expected.
No.
So that was why in the end.
So is that what, and again, I don't know if this is a detail you would know, is that what was on his death certificate? Right.
So there were 3 things. The cancer was the 3rd thing. It
really?
was DVT, the gastro bleed. I don't know in which order, but the gastro bleed, and then I know that the cancer was the 3rd thing.
That's incredible. How was it when you arrived home? Who was there? So just your mum and Sophie. David was there at this point, your other brother?
David was... God, like I say, everything is just foggy. I know that... No, David wasn't there, I don't think, at that point. Ali picked me up, my younger sister. She came to the airport to get me. And she said to me, do you want to know about the end? And so in the car on the way home, we just had a chat about what had happened and all that kind of stuff. And then we got back, and I just remember seeing my mum in the kitchen, and it was just, they were married for 50 years.
Wow.
And they were best friends. They were just as you would expect a couple who'd been married for 50 years to be, at each other's throats, but they just loved each other so much. Yeah. And I think she was just in shock. She never expected that. Stomach's rumbling. Inappropriate. We all knew it was coming, but I just don't think we thought it was going to be that soon.
Clearly no one did.
Yeah.
Why was it, if you don't mind me asking, why was it that David called you and it wasn't Sophie or Ali who had been at home with your mum? Or...
Sophie's my baby.
Sorry, why am I saying Sophie?
Ali is my sister.
Who lived in Canada?
No, she was still in Canada.
So who's the sister that was with
Ali?
Right.
Ali.
Not Sophie, not the 18-month-old. Ignore me. I'm trying to keep up with the millions of siblings.
I know, it's confusing.
So if Ali was at home with your mum and dad, how come it was David?
David was there as well at the end. So David, he was there. Robin, who was in London, my other brother, he was on his way down but didn't get there in time.
Right.
And so it was David as the kind of older sibling in that situation. He was the one that called.
Yeah.
And he'd kind of been, because he lived so close to mum and dad, he was the one that was there a lot.
Did you all kind of deal with it the same? Was it different? Were there any of your, besides your mum, obviously the matriarch, of which you were all worried about, of course, among the siblings, I mean, first of all, did you all have a close relationship, even though you were scattered around the world? Was there anybody that had particularly taken it harder than others? And was there any, tell me about that kind of dynamic.
We all deal with things very differently.
Okay.
My brother Robin is very pragmatic. He's very much like my husband. They're, very factual and very, I knew that he was obviously very upset, but we I don't know. Ali, my youngest sister, it hit her very hard because she was there. And I think that, there was a lot of trauma for her in that way. And she and my mum are really, really close. And I think that there was tension in the house when I got there. You could feel it.
Yeah.
Because everybody was just trying to deal with things in their own way. And, I think that you're not thinking about other people. You're just in your own head with your own grief and dealing with it that way. And I think that it was a little bit like that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine as well. And regardless of the grief that you're all going through, the levels of stress are so high. And as you say, so if your brother was pragmatic, his brain could have, I don't know, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but it sounds like his brain was kind of going to, okay, what do we do next? What paperwork do we need to do? What tick boxes do we need to get in order?
Well, it was David, who's the middle brother. He was the one that kind of, by the time I'd landed, Dad had been taken away and they'd organised the funeral and they'd pretty much done everything within that day. And he died on the 28th of November. His funeral was the 20th of December.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Absolutely, like that time of year. It's
I say it every time. I'm like, no. Surely my family member is the only person that's died. They're the most important thing in the world. Forgetting that, and of course, especially in winter in the UK. Yeah. It's a busy old time for funeral directors. So, okay, you just said something and I'd totally forgotten how I was going to say it. So did you get to see your dad?
No. And again, it was something that it was a Thursday when I landed. I don't know. Or was it Friday? Semantics again.
Pettifogging.
It was the weekend, basically. And so it was very difficult to... I was only there until Sunday. I think I flew back Sunday night. So there wasn't enough of a window for it to happen, I think. And I don't think they wanted me to.
Okay.
I always, I'd mentioned it and it was kind of... It wasn't brushed under the cart. It wasn't,
No.
It was just never really... discussed, and then I didn't push it. So I think that subconsciously maybe I didn't want to. I did want to, but I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so I left it in the hands of the gods, I guess.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. And I think that I'm glad. My mum said to me, he looked different. And when you saw him in September, he looked so well or better. And so those are the memories that you want to hold on to, not this. And I think that that's what Ali was really struggling with, is that he had looked very poorly at the end. So I think that it was probably a good thing that I didn't.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on that, because that would have definitely been my next question, because it's then those regrets that you struggle with and what have you. Okay, so what was your dad's name? I'm so sorry.
Tony. Anthony.
Tony? Oh, Anthony.
Yeah.
But Tony, real salt of the earth kind of name, isn't it? Okay, so then after that, what happened? You said you came back on the Sunday, but then you obviously had gone back for the funeral and bits and pieces.
Yeah, so I came back to Dubai, and because it was 3 weeks and I just didn't know what to do with myself. Yeah. And I knew that it was wrong. But I was just sort of, what?
Why do you think it's wrong?
I just felt like I should have been at home. I should have been with my family. I didn't want to come back.
Why did you?
Again, I think, I don't know, just that autopilot, thinking I just need to go back. What can I do for 3 weeks? And I couldn't really take that amount of time off work.
No.
So I came back. The funeral was on the 20th. So we planned to come back. We went home on the 14th, I think.
Okay.
All together.
Yeah.
For Christmas, everybody flew in.
And you
the
stayed
entire
for Christmas?
family. Yeah, the entire family flew in from their respective destinations, and so we had a big family Christmas. And it was kind of, I think that perhaps if Dad had a choice about when he was going to go, he decided to do it before Christmas so that we would all be together for Christmas. So yeah, I went back, and I remember having a conversation with my boss, and after I told her what had happened, and she said, "You're back too soon." And I was like, I just don't know what else to do. And so that was that. And I sort of drifted through those 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Isn't it weird? Why Why do we do that?
I think it's just, I don't know.
Because as you say, it's like an autopilot and you're not alone. So many people, I mean, obviously you had 2 distractions, both with your daughter and she was a bit poorly as well, but with work, and we just think, right, okay, well, let's just sink ourselves into this. And then maybe sometimes that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But you, in retrospect, you just don't know that, do you? But
I think that I'm just guilty all the time. I just feel bad about everything, like literally. And I've just remembered before Dad died, we were in hospital with her again. So she got admitted because she'd been in the ICU in the summer, she got admitted again to the ICU in November. So we were back with her then. And then in between Dad dying and then me going home again for the funeral, she was back in hospital again. So we were literally, and I think that's that's why everything is so foggy to me. I just don't remember the details, because everything is, just blurred into one thing. It was just one thing after another. And because Sophie was poorly, everything was just kind of like focused on her.
Yeah.
And I think for me as well, I started my new job. Within a week, she was in hospital. So I took a week off. Then I got sick. Well, I never get ill. And I randomly got gastroenteritis out of nowhere. So then I had a week off sick.
I'm not surprised. Your body must have just shut down.
I guess. I don't know. But it was just, that's what I mean. It was just like lots of different things that were going on. And your details.
Husband, Tommy.
Yes.
I mean, he must have been an incredible source of support.
Oh, yeah, 100%. He is the greatest man. None of us are really easy to live with, but I think that he's put up with a lot with me, and I think that he is my rock, as they say, and he really is. Yeah. He's very strong. He's always been, we'll go into hospital rooms with Sophie and they'll give us all of this detail about what's wrong with her, what medication needs to be done, and I'm literally like, oh, did they say this or did they say that? And he's just got it straight away, remembers everything, because he's brilliant.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just kind of like losing the plot.
Yeah.
And so for that, thank God for him.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Thank God for Tommy.
Yeah.
Where do you think his support was? Like, how did he support you? Was it like a physical thing, so he was always there for like a hug, or was it the pragmatic side, or was it just that you could, I can't explain it really, like he listens a lot. He's a man of few words, my husband, but when he has got something to say, it's always very profound or important. But he was just there. I remember the day that Dad died, I was sort of saying to him, I think it's going to be tonight, and he was like trying to be positive for me and just say, you shouldn't think like that, and he was just trying to be supportive in that sense. And then also he would look after Sophie, take her off for walks when he knew that I kind of needed that time with my family or my mum or whatever. And I know that he spent a lot of time talking to my mum as well, which was really nice. And I don't know, I think it's just his presence. He doesn't need to say anything. He's just sort of there. And we'll chat if you need to, and perfect. I might need his number.
He gives a good hug as well.
Oh, Tommy, I need your number. Okay, so then sort of after that, then how has your grieving process been? Because it hasn't been a very long time.
No, it hasn't.
So how have you dealt with everything?
I don't think I'm a very good griever.
Okay.
Is a griever a word?
Yeah, grieve is a word, but I mean, like, on what is your scale of grieving?
Well,
press 1 for highly unlikely. Like, how are you scaling your grieving?
I've always talked about it very easily.
Okay.
People are sensitive about the way that they say it. You hear pass away and you hear these other terms, and I've always been very kind of direct about it.
I don't know what, even I am as well. I'm always quite worried about saying died.
When did your dad
die?
I know, because some people don't like it because it is direct, isn't it? And it's a bit like, oof. So I've always been, I've always talked about him in that sense. I don't think it's really caught up with me yet. I have moments. we've just gone past the 2-year anniversary in November, and I found that a lot harder than I did the first. And I was talking to Mum, and I said this, and I said to her, God, I found today so hard. And she said, no, me too. I found it a lot harder than last year. So last year, she was here with me.
Oh, nice.
I was like, I want you to come hang out with us. We'll have a nice day. We'll go to the beach. We'll get burgers. My dad loved a burger.
Okay.
And
of course
then
he
we'll
did.
just
His name's Tony.
and let's just kind of celebrate. So we just had a nice day. But this year, I don't know whether it was being away from the family for so long.
Yeah.
The fact that Mum's very kind of rattling around that house. She's not. She'll kill me for saying that. She really isn't. She's very busy. But just these thoughts of your parents. You just want them to be okay. And I just wanted to be with her, and I just found it really hard. So I just found that last year, I wanted to sit in silence really, and just kind of with my thoughts. I went for therapy. I went to the Lighthouse because beginning of 2019 my anxiety levels were literally ridiculous, like through the roof. And I couldn't really put my finger on what was going on, and I think it was just a lot of things had come to a head for me.
And that was really shortly after your dad died.
But when I went, she wanted to. She was like, there's lots of things we're going to talk about. The anxiety. There was self-esteem issues. There were lots of things like that, and the grief. I just said to her, I don't want to talk about it. Like
Isn't it weird?
What good is talking about this going to do? I remember saying that to him. It's not going to bring him back, so I just don't want to go there.
How weird.
And that's kind of how I feel. I've surprised myself, but the fact that I've even said to you that I wanted to come and talk to you has really surprised me, because I'm like, and even now sitting here talking to you about it, everything's so muddled. I don't really have a story to tell. It's just all very complicated, it's
totally.
And I think that, even now, like, I have days where I just really miss him.
Yeah, of course.
And, I have days where Sophie's nearly 4 now.
Going on
14. And she says things to me, and I said to my mum quite a lot, I'm sure Dad channels his way through her sometimes, because she says the most random things.
Go on, give us an example.
She told me in the car, this was months ago, she told me in the car to turn the music down, and she said, I just want to chat with you, Mummy. Which was such a weird thing for a 3-year-old to say. And I was like, but it sounded, that was Dad, that was the type of thing that he would say.
That's so funny.
And for a while, she would ask about Grandpa. Where's Grandpa? And when we first went back to the house, she was saying, where's Grandpa? So we showed her the bright star in the sky, and we said, that's the Grandpa star. And so now she refers to it. And actually, one of my team was with her a few weeks ago. We were out just before Christmas, and it was getting dark, and she said to him, that's my Grandpa or something, and he was so choked by it. He was just like, oh my God, she's just, bless her. So, and she now understands, but I love that she remembers him. We've got a picture of him and her reading a book together, which is lovely. Amazing, that she has on her wall in her bedroom. And so she talks about him a lot, which is just lovely. I've really digressed. I don't even know what I was talking about.
It's fine. You were talking about how you told your therapist that you didn't want to grieve. But no, it's fine, because I do. Let me just carry on with Sophie very quickly, because that must mean a lot to your mum as well, for Sophie to understand who Grandpa is and what have you.
Yeah, definitely.
And to have those, at least those, because she was 18 months when he died?
Yes, she was.
Okay, so going back then to the therapist and the whole, I'm interested to know what your therapist then said, because your therapist, as I know, can't then force you to say, well, no, we have to talk about the grief. But was there a reaction that you can remember? Because I'm sure they would have wanted you and encouraged you to speak about the grief.
I think that it was one of those sort of things where she was like, we'll revisit this later. And then we never did, because I just didn't, I mean, what still now, I'm like, what to say? And everybody is different. And I'm not like, I'm a full advocate for therapy. I love it. I think that everybody should do it.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's like talking about yourself for an hour. What's not to love about that? But I just think that for me, I didn't know what I could solve, you know?
Yeah.
We talked about my guilt at not being able to be there. And even then I was just like, nothing that anyone can say is going to make me feel better about that. It will just be something that I live with, and it's still there, and it won't go away, but it will probably fade a little bit. So that's that basically. But I just guess I just didn't really need to talk about it in that sense.
Yeah, which is, as you say, you're only, and I'm not an expert, and I say this every time on the podcast. I'm not a professional, but it could be the fact that you have dealt with it, and obviously there's the grief cycle, and it's all over the place, and it doesn't mean there's a certain order to it. It could mean that you have dealt with it, or it could be the fact that you are only 2 years in, and it may start coming to you in the future, and therefore, and then you may want to go back to therapy, or you may start sort of addressing it yourself.
Yeah.
Are you close to a particular sibling? Did you speak to any of them about it and say, I just don't want to talk about the grieving side of it?
No. I remember speaking to my sisters and kind of saying, I don't know how I'm supposed to grieve. And I think that we were all in some sort of agreement because everybody's very different. And I just sort of, we had that conversation, and that made me feel better that we were all very much the same. And, you know, now we'll message each other and kind of say, I'm really missing Dad today or whatever. And that's nice. But yeah, no, it's...
And I don't think there is, as you say, and this is the theme going throughout the podcast, there's no right, there's no wrong way. Of course, it's when you are then looking into yourself going, like, surely I should be crying now, and surely I should be doing that.
I think that's, you know, on the day of his funeral, I remember standing in the drive waiting on my own and just having a bit of a moment then. And when I saw the car come up, I got quite emotional. And I think because the coffin was very small and Dad was quite a big guy. So that was a bit of a shock to me. Because obviously he'd, you know, how it is. And then the drive there, sort of don't really remember it very well, but then the service itself was just so lovely. Really? So lovely. My brother Robin is a excellent speaker. We had him as master of ceremonies at our wedding. Amazing. And he's just very, very good, and he delivered just the best eulogy for Dad, just spot on, finishing with 3 tears.
Oh, nice.
Which was amazing. And so I think it was, you know, there was definite upset. And my sister, Claire, she got up and read, I think it was a Spike Milligan poem. And she got very choked. And so I remember going up to kind of just join her and stand with her. And then my younger sister, Ali, did the same. And then Robin had said to me afterwards, God, that made me choke up. And then, you know, just, I think what I felt, it was just, you could just see the heartbreak in my mum's face, which was, you know, that's not easy to see. But then when looking around, it was just sheer pride. Yeah. Because so many people had come. Yeah. And actually, I didn't mention, you know, in the days after he died, my mum just received email after email, handwritten letters.
Because you're from a small town or village, aren't you?
It's community. I mean, yeah, but these were people that he'd worked with 25 years ago. Yeah. And so all of these cards just telling us what an amazing man he was. You know, there was somebody who'd worked with him when he was just starting out, and, you know, Dad had been his mentor, and he was just like, you know, I'll never forget him, how amazing he was. And that was one of the nicest things that came out of it. You know, my mum's living room, it was just cards everywhere. Really? And everyone had taken the time to actually put pen to paper, which I just thought was so nice, so touching, with a story about Dad and, you know, what he'd done for them, or, you know, just all of these really nice things. And I know it was a really great comfort for my mum and for all of us, because, you know, we all knew that Dad was amazing. Of course, but to have these people telling us the same was just a really, really lovely thing. So yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And every time you mention your mum, you get really emotional.
Yeah.
And I can see it on your face and I can hear it in your voice. I know it might sound like an obvious question, but why is that? Why does it affect you so much?
Because my mum she's obviously the matriarch of our family, and she's she is without a doubt one of the strongest people that I know. I mean, she's had 6 kids, like,
yeah. How tough do you need to be?
Insanity. And she's just, I can't describe it, but she is just the most amazing woman. And my heart breaks for her because Dad was her soulmate, and you know, I just can't imagine what it must be like for her. But she continues. I'm not going to tell you how old she is because she'll kill me, but she, you know, she is everywhere. She goes to Sydney, she comes to Dubai, she travels to Canada. She's annoyed this year that she's not been able to travel.
Yeah,
you know, she was here in March just before everything shut down, and you know, she hasn't traveled since, which I know is really annoying her.
I bet.
And she's, you know, she's not a little old lady.
No.
But she's just out there and getting on with her life. You know, I messaged her a few weeks ago about the tear situation, and she said, honestly, the only thing that really affects me is that I can't go to Zumba. So
she's a Zumba.
She is,
okay, brilliant.
Yeah, she is. And you know, she's just incredible. Really, really.
And how has she, you know, coped obviously since, besides the obvious grieving losing her husband, her soulmate? How has she been doing?
Routine, I think, has been very important to her, and structure of her day. The lockdown was very difficult for her because she, you know, couldn't do these things, but she still gets out and walks. And
was she on her own? No one's living with her?
No one lives with her, but my brother pops over, you know, every now and then to make sure that she's okay. But she's not, like, she's had letters to say that she should stay at home, but she will go to the supermarkets, and she'll go out walking, and she's got a great group of girlfriends around her. Good. Who have, you know, she'll go to Zumba or coffee with. But then she lives in this cul-de-sac of maybe 5 houses, and they're all delivering food to her. And you know, they all go out. That during the lockdown period, they were all outside on a Thursday evening clapping for the NHS and taking out their chairs and having a glass of whatever. And so it's a great community that she's got around her.
Amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah,
actually.
no, it's incredible. But she's a very private person, my mum.
Okay.
And
so she's going to love this.
Yeah, she'll really be delighted about this.
What's your mum's name?
Jill.
Sorry, Jill. I didn't ask her. She asked me, Jill. It's nothing to do with me.
So yeah, she grieves privately, but she'll always say today was hard, or you know, whatever. So
she's quite open and vocal with you.
Yeah.
Who do you think you're the closest to your mum, or do you think David?
We're all close in different ways.
Oh, okay.
So you know, David's geographically is the closest, and they spend a lot of time together.
Right. Okay.
So you know, she was with them at Christmas.
Right.
And you know, they were together on Dad's anniversary. They went for a big walk and stuff. So
that, I mean, that's phenomenal in itself. To have 6 children, but to have a strong relationships with 6 children is one thing. To maintain strong relationships with 6 children who are all around the world is another level as well. And the grandchildren, by the sounds of it, as well.
Yeah. There's 7 grandchildren. 1, 2, 3,
we may fact check this as well at another time.
7 grandchildren. Yeah, I just had to double check that. 7.
That's amazing. Going back to you, although you say, or you didn't speak to your therapist about the grief, what was your grief relief? Like how did you push yourself through this? I mean, besides work, and those times where you said you did have tough days thinking about your dad, like what got you through the last 2 years?
I have moments where I just need to kind of take myself off and remove myself from things, life. Sit and read, or just sit and be on my own for a little bit.
Okay. At home, somewhere else?
Yeah, usually at home. That's it. Reading.
Yeah.
Just that kind of, I love a good thriller. And I find I kind of have this thing with books where I'll read something that's a bit heavy and then I'll put something crap in the middle of it just to, you know, ooh, this is mindless and this is easy. So I do a lot of that.
Right.
I do read intelligent books as well, not just trashy thrillers.
You're talking to someone who's read all of Katie Price's novels.
Oh, well.
That's right. I'm highbrow. I don't really read books. What are you currently reading?
I've actually just finished a book, but I'm about to start a book called... Oh, geez. I can't remember what it's called, sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
I'm not really reading anything at the minute.
We'll come back to that. I've just finished audiobook, because I don't read, Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
That's what I'm about to start.
Okay, there you go. It's... and this is a shout out to Sarah Headley-Heimers again. She gets more mentions on this podcast than I do. You know Sarah, I know in the industry. She recommended it to me because of the year I've been through, and yeah, it's amazing.
I actually have been dipping in and out of it, so I know that it's amazing.
Yeah.
I just kind of, yeah.
It's a funny one because when I first started listening to it, I didn't want to untame my inner warrior. I was a bit like, this is a bit much. But yeah, it's really good. And I like, so my friend, again, who we spoke about, Anna Roberts, earlier, we didn't speak about you badly, Anna, if you're listening. We were talking about the people we knew. She tried to listen to it on Audible, and it's Glennon Doyle, the author, that actually narrates it. And she's got quite a whiny American accent, and she was like, I couldn't listen to it. It didn't bother me at all, weirdly. And I liked it because sometimes it would be, for me, sorry, I've really taken this over and it's not about you anymore, is like I would listen to it in the morning and then almost in the background, but then all of a sudden something will really cut through and I'm like, whoa, like rewind it a little bit and listen to it again. So yeah, good book. I'd like to hear your... Yeah,
I'm in a WhatsApp group with some friends that my friend Hayden amusingly calls the low high, if you listen to the high low. And it's basically we all just recommend books and TV shows and
TV shows I'm down with. I'm actually really pleased with myself that I'm able to like recommend a book of late. I'm like, I've just been reading Untamed, whereas before I'm not that highbrow and I can't recommend anything like that. I was like, I read Heat magazine once. So that's good though. At least you had that escapism, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's that. There's my family have kind of kept me, Sophie keeps me on my toes, and my friendship group as well. Then the death is quite difficult when somebody close to you dies. Friends can be weird, and I think that people don't. I mean, we've all been there, and we don't really know how to respond or what to say or whatever. But I just I've got a kind of group of friends who've been consistent in sort of just being there if I needed to talk about anything. No one ever changes the subject. They don't necessarily say, "How you feeling about your dad?" or anything like that. It's literally just I'll say something and then everyone will kind of jump, which is really nice. A lot of my girlfriends in the UK came to the funeral. They knew him really well. My friend Louise, she loved my dad. So she was there kind of all the way through. And actually now she goes to see my mum quite a lot, which I just love. Yeah. I just love it. And then just work. I hate that I'm saying it, but it keeps me busy, and I love my job and I love what I do. And so it's easy for me to throw myself into it, even though I've been saying, the one thing that I don't want to be doing is working 24/7. And so something that I'm intending on working on in the new year and, being less,
work focused, I guess. I think it is about them priorities, isn't it? I mean, I don't have children, but obviously close family. And it's like, okay, well, these are the decisions that you make and what have you when it comes to work and throwing yourself into it. But if it's worked for you so far, you throwing yourself back into work and you enjoy it, I sort of don't see the harm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple of things, isn't there? That work is a brilliant way to kind of focus your mind,
Yeah.
and especially when you've got a job to do.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's making it work for you, in the sense that you can put everything into something and you're no good to anyone, if that makes sense.
I love the story, and I'm so pleased that you reached out, because I didn't know it at all. It obviously sounds very similar to Louise and her mum and my dad as well. And I'm pleased you reached out to me now, even more so because you haven't done the therapy. And I'm not saying this has been therapy, but just to talk about it and come to those like realizations. Would you consider speaking to your therapist about the grief now?
I don't think so.
Okay. I love the fact that you're so I love the fact that you are so comfortable with that decision.
I think at this point, I don't feel like I need to. Never say never. I might decide to go back in a while and talk about it. I think that, that this year has been horrendous for everybody. And there's been a lot of things that have been keeping my mind busy. So I've been distracted from it. And potentially it's going to come up, the way that I was feeling on his anniversary, I think is quite evident from that. But we'll see. But for now, I just think, it's okay.
Good. Yeah. And then that's all you can ask for. I was the same. I didn't even want to do therapy. I know I speak about this a lot on the show. So on the show, I can't believe I just said that. Thanks for coming. It's actually really embarrassing.
Who are you? Who do you think you are?
Lorraine. I think I'm Lorraine. I think I'm Holly Willoughby. Not the show. It comes up a lot on the podcast because my mum died in 2010 and my dad died in 2012. And I didn't go to therapy and what have you. But then when I did, and the reason I didn't want to speak about my dead parents was because I was like, and I've said this many times before, is I thought that, okay, this therapist is going to say, oh, well, you're grieving like this because they were divorced, or you're grieving like this because like you had this and you had like daddy issues or something. And I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone about this and for the first, and again, I change this number every time, maybe 4 or 5 sessions with my therapist, didn't even talk about my dead parents. With so many other things. I'm a very complex young lady.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? There's just other things that are...
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's like, because... Oh, I don't know what I was going to say.
No, but it's true. And this is why, going back to episode 2, speaking to my brother Russell, was when he first went to therapy, he didn't know what to say. And it was like... And I'm speaking to friends now at the moment who are going through things. They were like, well, I don't really know what to talk about. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's why you're paying them quite a bit of money per hour. But all of a sudden just you just start talking, don't you? And this is grief aside. It could be about absolutely anything. You just start talking. And I went through a lot this year, and I would speak to my counsellor every Tuesday. And some Tuesdays I'd love it. I'd get ready with Zoom because she's in the UK and I'm ready to go. Some Tuesdays I'd be like, I can't be bothered. Nothing's happened this week. I've been absolutely fine. So what? And then I'm on the phone trying.
And then when you get there,
oh my God, I'm so pleased I spoke to you.
I know. I'd be like, I'm fine this week, and then 20 minutes in, I'd be like,
yeah, it's so weird. And sometimes you cry, and sometimes you don't, whether you're that emotional or not. And yeah, it's interesting. But what is the common thread through all the episodes of the show is that people have said that therapy is great, whether that's regarding grief or not, and just to go for it.
Yeah, and I like I say, never say never. I probably will end up going back at some point because I really loved going to see my therapist. I was actually really sad when it was finished, but I was like, we're good for now, and this is good, so let's carry on, let's kind of stop it here. And then, but I would always, if I had a wobble this year and I was like, maybe I'll go back, but then because of the situation, I was just like, let's just try and get through it. And then that, here I am. But like, my
advice to you would be then, and this is based on the people that I've spoken to on the podcast, is just try and be aware of those signs, as you say, and just think, okay, maybe I do need to speak to them now, or anybody, even if it is your close girlfriends, because like Louise's, luckily I didn't have that grief fog come in. And that's what I would never want to see for anybody to happen, to be like, okay, I've left it too late and now it's going to hit me hard. So yeah, maybe just be slightly aware of those moments, and then just reach out to your therapist or whoever and go from there.
Yeah.
Is my cat annoying you?
No, not at all. She's sleeping.
What's really weird, I have to tell you if you're listening, and I'll look at the camera as well, and I don't know if you can see my cat on the camera, is my cat hates people. She barely likes me, if I'm honest. So I normally have to lock her up in the bedroom. She's got food and water up there. So when I'm recording the podcast, I normally have to put her upstairs. And she's come in and just jumped on the sofa right next to you, right next to Kathryn, and she's been asleep the whole time. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe she's a, what are they called when you have them on planes? Emotional support animals.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe she's one of those. Don't touch her, she'll kill you. I always ask my guests each episode to give me a recommendation of other podcasts or Instagram accounts or something that you just love. And it could be anything, but just something that makes you happy when you look at it or hear it. Do you have a recommendation?
I started following Good News movements.
Yeah.
During the lockdown, just for nice bits of good news every now and then, which I love. And then I've actually recently started listening to Fern Cotton's Happy Place
Happy
podcast.
Place.
Yeah, I just listened to the Robbie Williams one a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And I love her and I love that whole thing. So it's great.
People say I'm like Fern Cotton and Sarah Cox. Do you remember her?
Yes.
Which I don't know if I'm happy about that or not, but I'll take it. So it's Good News _movement, because I follow them too. Really nice. Go and check it out on Instagram. I'll tag it as well. And it's just little things. It will be like people in the street clapping their UPS delivery driver, or
penguins cuddling.
Penguins cuddling is always going to make everyone happy, isn't it? Or the ones that kind of, I'm not crying, you're crying ones, where there's the one with the little boy who they switched on his hearing aid. And
and he heard his
mum's voice for the first time.
Yeah.
That does nothing for me. And you're a parent, so that must just be like, oh my God. Right
yeah.
now. Okay, and then Fern Cotton's Happy Place.
Yes.
I can't listen to that, I don't think. Maybe I'll give it a try. I definitely can't listen to it with Robbie Williams. I cannot stand him.
Well, I don't really, but
Sorry,
it was
Tess.
just interesting.
Really? That's good, I suppose. And I think that's the interesting one, is that maybe you have a different view of people. I had a message from someone on Instagram, and it was following episode 6 with Louise Jacobson, of which why you are here with me sitting on my sofa. And I have to move the microphone and lean in a little bit. And it's so lovely. And I'm not going to say the name of the person who messaged me. Hi, Katie. I'm really loving the podcast so much that I was inspired. My husband has been off work sick since October, not COVID related, but he was really down and still trying to support me and our 2 children while I worked full time. After listening to episode 6 with Louise Jacobson and encouraging people to live life more like her late mother, Marjorie, I decided that after receiving a Christmas bonus, which I didn't think anyone would get for obvious reasons in my company, that I would buy my husband the car that he had been drooling over for the last couple of years. I know it's a bit over the top, but I decided to #be more Marjorie, and it made me and him so happy. Thank you and Happy New Year.
That's so lovely.
And we got chatting. She even reached out to Louise herself and messaged her on Instagram.
Aww.
And that's what, again, the common thread through the podcast is, I didn't start this podcast for any other reason than I was just going to talk to my brothers about my dead parents. And it's kind of evolved. And if anyone listening, if it's helped one person, and I find it interesting that you've said it a number of times that you don't feel you have a story to tell about the podcast. But I think many people are the same. And many people have gone through death. They might not have gone through grief, but they've gone through death. And we just need to let people know that everyone else is out there and to support each other. Last thing, would you have any advice for anybody that is maybe listening and that's kind of gone through that, especially, you know, the guilt that you felt about not being there? Obviously, we're expats, but we have listeners all around the world. But yeah, any advice that you can give out?
I think I'm the last person to be giving anyone any advice.
Why?
But I just kind of think that in the situation that I was in, I would probably say to do what your gut is telling you, because everything else is secondary to family. And I think that that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
You know, my sister did the right thing. She dropped everything and was back for a long time with my parents. And I wish I probably wouldn't have been able to do exactly that, but I wish that I'd done more. And I think that would be the one thing that I kind of, if you're able to, then be honest about the situation and do what you think is right.
I love it. And that's all it is. And I think if I can add on to that is, I know it's maybe difficult, and I'll be speaking to someone else regarding the same sort of subject, is approach your job, approach your work and your line manager, whomever. You might be absolutely terrified and think they're not the most understanding person in the world. I think you'd be very surprised. So do that. Kathryn Wingrove, thank you so much. I'm really pleased that you approached me. And I mean, God, we spoke for like 2 hours before I hit record about everything else. But are you pleased you came on?
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming in. And thank you so much for listening. Let's see if I can remember all of the things I'm supposed to say. Like, subscribe, give us a rating. I love it when you write write a review as well on Apple Podcasts. That's brilliant. So do that. Follow on Instagram. Poppy's just still across Kathryn's feet. Follow us on Instagram. It's That Grief Relief Podcast, and the same somewhere else. On Twitter, it's different. It's That Grief Relief Pod. And if you want to reach out, I love it when you send me emails. So you please do. It's thatgriefreliefpodcast@gmail.com. If you've been affected by anything that I've spoken about today or that Kathryn's spoken about today, I cannot stress enough that I'm not a professional, but please feel free to message me. A lot of people have. I'm planning to, in the future, come up with kind of some resources to help point you in the right direction. And if you want to come on and tell your story, like Kat did, which is amazing, then please do let me know. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you.